Hello, welcome to Cerulean Arts Gallery. Today we're speaking with John James Pron in conjunction with his Cerulean Arts Collective Exhibition, which is on now through November 10th. Hello, John.
Hello, Michael. How are you?
Thanks for being here tonight.
Oh, my pleasure.
So please tell us about your show.
Tell us about my show. Well, let me tell you about me just very briefly. I'm an architect by profession. I've practiced design in firms that have renovated hotels in the Delaware Valley for the past 30 years. I'm retired from teaching at Temple University's Tyler School of Art and Architecture, where I taught both contemporary architectural design and architectural history. And I specialize pretty much in adaptive reuse, which is like a both and principle. How do you preserve the soul of a building and yet adapt it to a modern world? And for the past 25 years, I've also been an artist, and this is my second show here at Cerulean. I don't paint, I draw. I was trained in architectural drawing by a painter, Neil Welliver at Penn in the early 1970s, and I still just love my pens and pencils. And I'm mentioning that because that'll be a clue into the kind of art that I do. And I'm going to focus on that first drawing that you see right here. The show is called Withdraw. Of course, I am drawing, and I love to draw. You know, my pens and pencils are just a part of my fingers. And most architects look forward to how they can change the world and how they can make things better. And usually, what I draw is again to propose things I would hope to see built and see changed. But this is really looking back. It's a tough world. I'm looking back into my family's history, which is based on immigration, Russian and Ukrainian immigrants coming to America in the early 1900s. And what can I learn and what can I appreciate from them? And looking at this one drawing, it's titled Architect. There's a little 2-year-old architect standing looking there. It's black and white. Um, it's appropriate to a world where I'm focusing on Philadelphia families in the 20s, 30s, 40s, and 50s when our record is really black and white. And I do collage. That is my chosen technique, which is photographs, in this case, of my old neighborhood and the people that live there and myself. And then I draw, to integrate. And what you're seeing here is my perspective layout of a building to be built in black ink and rendered with black Prismacolor pencils and charcoal. So it's certainly is mixed media, uh, but it's a new composition of new and old. I just really very much believe that both and is the way the world ought to work. Uh, and I work clearly as contrast, but it's a compatible contrast. The past is still alive to be learned from and to be valued at the same time as things have to change. So you always have in all of my mixed media images this kind of combination of back and forth, two techniques showing two very different worlds coming together compatibly. Most of the show is dealing with my families, uh, some smaller works, some larger works. Probably half of it is focused on my families, uh, the pleasures of the friendships that those families had, how supportive they were in the past, some of the hardships they went through. And I want to just focus in particular on this one drawing, which is my favorite, uh, called Scrounging for Heat. And it's very personal because it's a story that my mother has told about as a little girl being sent out with a coal bucket to the train tracks nearby to collect whatever coals would get bounced out from the moving coal cars to bring home to heat the stove in their tiny little alleyway house, their Trinity house nearby. I wouldn't say it was child labor, but it was a tough world. And my mother, who had to quit school, that school that you see in the background, she quit at 8th grade in order to get a job. She was orphaned by mother at 16. So You have a drawing that shows the past, tells a story. Uh, it's kind of a frightening drawing in that this little girl is, overhead threatened by the shadows of the Frankfurt Elevated that look like some kind of giant monster, clawing its way toward her. Uh, Ominous, but I think very, very powerful. And it is, again, it's my favorite drawing to kind of tell that story. And it's very personal. That's not my mother, but it's another little girl doing exactly the same thing. Most of the other drawings, uh, and there's an entire wall of them, they show the happy times, a birthday party at a dead-end alley. Here again, I use a lot of the black, not so much to threaten, but like to kind of protect and to enclose them. This little alleyway is where families would get together. And my families were mixed. My families were Russian and Ukrainian. They were different religions. They were Orthodox and Catholic. They had different income levels. My mother was on the verge of poverty. My father's was maybe lower middle class. And yet they came together around actually my birthday cake and my party, protected and yet all reinforcing uh, the need for everyone to help in the neighborhood to survive well. And the drawings continue. Some are more abstract, some are more literal, uh, not wanting to speak specifically about any one of them, but they do show uh, one of them. The split drawing is my paternal family house where um, kids play in the street. Kids are kids everywhere. Kids play in the ruins of Gaza. Kids played in the gardens of Versailles. Kids, give them chalk, give them some sticks, give them a ball. Kids will survive and have fun in the grimmest of situations. And this is a drawing that's part realistic with its photography, but also part abstracted, meant to be part sort of surreal. It's kids everywhere growing up, being together. My family's neighborhood house, now long gone. An intense lifestyle inside the house, the family getting together to celebrate aunts and uncles and cousins and babies and all that. But also the lifestyle was outside on the streets as well. And so you have this kind of split image of, houses were small, families were large. So playing in the streets and socializing in the streets. This was the neighborhoods were maybe poor, but very lively. And again, they sustained themselves as families and as members of minority community. And a tough neighborhood. Okay. Tough growing up if you were not into athletics, like I was not. Uh, you could get bullied. I could get bullied. Um, I would joke that the bullies would throw punches at me, and in retaliation, I would throw books back at them, making a joke. But I survived. Wanting to escape the neighborhood. My mother and her girlfriend working at a meat packing plant. Dreaming to escape, dreaming of better lives, wanting to move to some idyllic American house in the countryside. That was their dream. Some of them did, some of them didn't. And as in all Philadelphia neighborhoods, it's a community of stoop sitters. And I reconstructed this collage as sort of bleachers on the public zone. Everybody's out, everybody socializes, everybody knows everybody, everybody kibitzes. There was a very intense social life on the streets. Many of these are my family. I'm in there at least 5 times in these pictures. And then I have an entire wall, beautifully hung by Mike and Tina, which is sort of the wall of religion, the wall of spirituality. And everything there is very two-dimensional, very flat, very Byzantine in style. I have constructed icons in the center, icons, traditionally Byzantine icons, use gold leaf, which I trained myself to do because that is the, that is the material of the heavens. So these are not necessarily the official saints of the Orthodox Church, but these are the important events in my family's life. Escaping, from the old country, coming here, parents, grandparents that you see here. These are my personal saints. These are the people who saved me, who made my life. And I have a lot of reverence for them. So they are, this Byzantine wall set up here, almost in a kind of a religious focus. I could envision setting up an altar and candlesticks in front. I don't think this was meant to be performance art. I had thought about asking Mike and Tina about turning out the gallery lights, having everybody give lighted tapers as they come into the gallery, and then, of course, the gold leaf would sparkle in candlelight. But I decided I would not ask. That's a bit of much for maybe the other artists. And on one side is the importance of the church. Churches did everything to sustain those families at all levels, at all age groups, all kinds of activities, all kinds of dinners, all kinds of evening events, athletics. This is Philadelphia. These are the Orthodox and Catholic communities of Northern Liberties. And they had a great deal to do with holding the immigrant family together. Of course, all this is gone. They've moved away. The churches, many still surviving, are barely thriving in today's world. And I'm going to pause at the far drawing at the other end of the icons, because this is another one of my favorite drawings and one of my kind of important images. It's titled Madonna and Child. And it's framed as an iconostasis, which is a wall of icons, but it's dedicated to immigration. That's my mother with her tiny purse. That's her mother, my grandmother, who was widowed in 1921, right after my mother was born. She was a single mother as a widow. She got widow's aid from the government, which was the only money she had coming in. She had 8 children, the eldest of which was 13 years old. She left one other child in the Ukraine, her oldest son, who she never saw again. She only had one eye poked out in an agricultural accident. This is what she went through. This is what she achieved. She is, again, one of my saints. I am stunned by her accomplishments, by what she pulled off. And then after this, one more wall, which is a series of drawings, which is also the history of the old neighborhood, which is the neighborhood of Northern Liberties, one of the oldest neighborhoods in Philadelphia, as old as Old City, as old as Society Hill. And I trace the history from the Lenni Lenape, first negotiating with William Penn, through the British occupation during the Revolution, a time when it was a thriving little market town with its main town square and its market buildings. They were pretty far from downtown Philadelphia, Quaker Philadelphia, to even looking at the history of it today, which is now a very shishi, very sophisticated neighborhood with almost total demolition of the buildings of what that community was. Highways have torn through there. Fat cat developers are building tall, apartment buildings and condos. Everybody lives on the rooftops with their private decks. Nobody's on the sidewalks anymore. Uh, Gentrification used to be considered a great idea when older neighborhoods were revived. But we also know gentrification, destroys history and has pushed out a lot of the early residents of that. The streams that flowed through there were polluted by development, by heavy industry. That snake, which still exists as Canal Street, is showing the poisonous waters that destroyed that as a neighborhood that brought in more industry and certainly oppressed the poor people that lived there. This is the market that existed, the market where actually my father met my mother, working as a clerk in one of the shops along the street, serviced by nearby farmers. It was a very separate little world, different from Philadelphia, and not a high-class neighborhood at all. Pirates lived there in William Penn's time. It was the first red, what's the term? Neighborhood for prostitutes and for illegal gambling. Northern Liberties meant liberty in terms of illicit liberties as well. Black slaves would hide in Northern Liberties. It was a refuge for them as well. So its history is very complicated. And that's the origin of what you see as the snake there. The British had fortified it, had dammed up the river, which is why it called the dam the Cohock Sink, because they made a moat out of it. It was polluted, it was flooded, it was marshy. They built fortifications on the top. It kept George Washington and his troops at Valley Forge not being able to attack Philadelphia, but certainly degraded that neighborhood by what it went through. And then going full circle, we can go back to the first two images that Tina had projected on up. Talked about this before. And that's where we began the talk. This is where I want to end the talk. And it's appropriate because these are beginnings and endings. The drawing on the left, titled My Two Grandfathers, who I never knew, who bravely came to the New World with their families, laid down roots. I never knew them. Both died in very sad, very tragic circumstances that are really very private to the family. And so their dream, they succeeded for their families, but their dream ended rather sadly and rather tragically. And the other drawing is really sort of new beginnings, and it's kind of beautifully matched side by side. I ended up growing up in the row house neighborhood of Northeast Philadelphia down below with unbelievably repetitive, identical row houses on identical streets. But me, I had my books, I had my libraries, I had my encyclopedias. I always loved buildings and architecture, and I dreamed of other places. I dreamed of ancient cities like Alexandria and Rome and Athens and all that. So this is the young boy, rocketing ahead to a world, to a universe that's full of wondrous pieces of ancient architecture. And well, it became my career. It became what I practice. Can have it both ways, can have both the past and the present. So this is my story, and I'm showing you this because it was a great discovery for me to learn all these things with the help of cousins and appreciate all of this. And I know that every one of us is an immigrant of some sort, and you have your stories as well to tell. So I am immensely grateful for being able to convert it into art and put it up here and have you view it and appreciate it. Michael had mentioned that the show is up till the 10th of November. I'm going to be at the gallery all day on the 2nd of November if you want a personal tour. If you want a really full rendition of the history of Northern Liberties that's behind all of this, you can look. I have a YouTube video that you can access as well to hear the stories, the anecdotes, the full history behind the neighborhood and my family. And to end this, thank you. And I would just want to say I'm very grateful to Mike and Tina for help and support and all the work to pull off this show. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much, John. It's a wonderful show. And everything's also available on our website, ceruleanarts.com. And thanks again and have a great night.
Thank you, Michael.